Welcome back to another Chris McPherson Show Daily Dose, and we are talking something a little bit different. We are heading to Northern New South Wales to talk about the NPL football and the run home, and I'm joined by two of my co-commentators who cover the NPL for Northern New South Wales football. Harry Scobie, welcome to the Daily Dose.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here. It's obviously the business end of the season come now, so yeah, really keen to get into it.
Certainly, as any of the fans of our weekly show would have met Harry before. They wouldn't have met Matt Buettner, though. Matt, an injured player turned commentator, mate. You're on contract with Lambton at the moment, but out injured, so you've been digging in very deep with the commentary.
Yeah, I've had plenty of action this year, which is good off the pitch, but still getting involved and working very closely with you and Scobie this year, which has been great. And I think Scobie said it brilliantly. We're into the business end now, which is exciting, and it's a good race to the finals. So I can't wait to break it down with you boys.
Yeah, well, that's the interesting thing, right? Like, a lot of people's eyes are going to be focused on the race to the finals, and we're going to go through each of the teams' run homes from here. But there's not just the race to the finals. There's the B League or the Australian Championship, which top spot will get first, I guess, option at, is essentially the way it would be, and you'd expect that they will take that. But there's also relegation. There's the automatic relegation if you finish 12th. And then there's the playoffs as well if you finish 11th, Harry. And at the moment, the team that sits in there is a team that was experienced in playoffs last year in Adamstown.
Yeah, they've been quite an improved team this year, Adamstown. They've matched it. I think you would know, Matt, that night in the Australia Cup, they actually matched it really well, and they've just struggling to make it above 10th position. And they're struggling this year, but I think it is a bit of an improvement from last year. They seem to have a bit more go in them this season. Like, they got a draw last week, which they picked up against Olympic. That was a decent result at home, and they've matched it with a couple of other teams as well. So although it is a disappointing season for them, they're in a position now where they really need to look at the ladder and in a bit of strife.
Yeah, when we look at that ladder, Matt, realistically, there's probably a few brackets, and you look at the top, and Broadmeadow and Edgeworth, they're both equal on 47 points as we speak, sort of going into the games this weekend, the weekend of the 19th and 20th of July. You then go to Weston, who've got a bit of a mortgage on third in 34. Those three, you feel they're basically booked into the semi-finals. I actually don't think mathematically that Broadmeadow or Edgeworth can miss, and Weston would need to do something horrific over their last 6 games.
Yeah, I agree. You'd have to say those top three are pretty comfortable, and they have been all year, to be honest, Chris. I had the luxury of being at the game on the weekend, the Western Bears and Magic out at Weston, and look, I like the way Western play. They obviously had a good result last night as well, which we'll look into. But look, I think they could be potentially a dark horse. There's been a lot of riding on the B League, as you said, and who's going to take out the premiership. But I think Western are going to be really good in the final series. They play a really nice brand of football. They've had a lot of good signings this year as well. But there's no doubt those top three sides have probably locked themselves in. And if you go back and talk about Adamstown, well, I'm looking at their last 3 games. You have a draw and 2 losses. They had a good result against Olympic on the weekend. And Olympic, again, struggled to get points at Adamstown. It's been a bit of a feature for the last couple of years, I've been told. But look, if you look at the points, they weren't far off it, really. 17 games played. If they had a better, couple of games, they're potentially in that position to play finals football as well. That's 7 points that they've missed in the last 3 weeks, and that puts you up to 20 points in that kind of final space. So again, from that kind of 4th to 10th position, anything can happen, really, Chris.
It is quite open. And Harry, then we look at that next bunch that Matt just alluded to. And interestingly, Western is one of the 2 sides in this competition that's got more games to play than anyone else. Plus, they've got Australia Cup, as do the other side in question, Cooks Hill, and a State Cup final to play. But when we look down and we work our way down, that next bunch is so congested. We've got Maitland on 25 with 5 games to play. Lambton and Charlestown on 23 and 24, both with 4 games to play. Olympic on 22 with 5 games to play. And then Cooks Hill still with a faint hope. They've got 6 games to play and 18. BelSwans starting to drift away, just 4 games to play and 15. Valentine on 16, 4 games to play as well. Those teams, you feel, the BelSwans and Valentine are probably more focused on staving off relegation playoffs than focus on making the top 5. But it's very congested in that middle, as Matt said, 4 to 10.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think Butte summed it up perfectly. Like, around that 4th to 10 mark, there's still a lot to play for teams, whether you're trying to make the finals or whether you're trying to stay, in the competition for next season. I think Western, we touched on them just before with Matt, but they have a huge advantage. They've got an extra game in hand. I think if I'm right, Chris, so do Olympic as well. They got an extra game in hand on the likes of Charlestown and the Jaffas. So huge benefit for them. They're not tricky games, but certainly winnable ones. But a lot to play for each and every team based in that category between 4th and 10th.
Yeah, realistically, Matt, when you look at it from here, Weston are probably the one team, and again, noting they do have extra games, and it can be an advantage in terms of accruing points, but throw in a state cup final, throw in a round of 32, they've essentially got 8 games to play, while some teams will be playing 4. So it's going to be, Saturday or Sunday and Wednesday every week for them for the next four weeks or so leading into the finals. That can be a good thing, though. Obviously, you're going to have some tired bodies, but for Weston, they've got a bit of room to move on it, whereas Cooks Hill know their league games, they're going to need to win probably 5 of those 6 if they want to have any faint hope of getting to finals, as well as trying to advance in those other competitions.
Yeah, I agree. And look, again, if Weston got a result on the weekend, they could have knocked on the door to potentially push for that 1st and 2nd position, especially with that win overnight against Edgeworth. But at the moment, again, if they do something crazy in the next 6 weeks, league games, which is not going to happen, they're going to finish 3rd. It looks like that. So for the club as a whole, Weston, they haven't been in the Australia Cup for a number of years now. So that's an exciting prospect and game for the club and Weston as a whole, and the State Cup final as well. That's exciting. Another game to be won there. They definitely have their eyes on those games now as a focus. They know they're going to play finals football, and I think they just got to have their men ready for those big games when it does come to the knockout rounds.
It's an interesting one, Harry. Obviously, the round of 32 is a debut for both those sides. But for that State Cup final, it's a chance not only for a bit of momentum, but for a side like Weston, who they're the only side to beat Edgeworth, and they've done it twice now, once on penalties in the Australia Cup and then on last night as well in that catch-up game. That will give them confidence, but winning a bit of silverware to add to the cabinet would certainly give you some confidence heading into finals too.
It certainly would, especially if they aren't to go deep into the final series with the NPL competition, like we mentioned. It's a chance for silverware, and I think they're probably the strong favourites going into it as well. I know we touched on Adamstown earlier, but yeah, that momentum swing, I think that's in a couple of weeks, Chris, that State Cup final, that can really set them and boost them with confidence heading into the final series.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see. Well, let's go through the teams. I reckon we start from the bottom, boys. Let's have a look through their runs home and talk about it. So let's start with New Lambton. I think it's fair to say New Lambton are in a bit of strife here. They're on 6 points. They are 8 points adrift of the team in front of them in Adamstown. Realistically, if they are to avoid automatic relegation, they're going to need to win probably 4 of these games. The good news is they play Adamstown twice in this run home. If they're to get out of the playoff spot, they're going to basically need to win all of these, which for a team that's won 1 from 17, I don't see happening. So if we look at their run home, they have BelSwans away, Lambton at home, Adamstown at home, Newcastle Olympic at home, and then Adamstown away, which if they could get a couple of games on the run on the way in, that last game could end up being a playoff to go into the playoffs versus automatic relegation. But do we see a story here where New Lambton avoid automatic relegation? I'll start with you, Harry.
I'm going to say no. I just think it's too late in the season now. I think they know what needs to be done, but then again, if other results don't go their way, they've sort of created this own mess for themselves. Like you mentioned, Chris, I think it's like 4 wins or something they need, and other results go their way for them to push up, but it's not looking likely at this stage. I remember the game we called Buttes, their first win of the season. That was an exciting time for them, but I think they've just left it too late, Chris.
Yeah, Buttes, I think the best situation for them would be if they won 3 and Adamstown didn't get any points. But we'll talk through Adamstown's run in a moment. 2 wins over Adamstown will be a great start, but that still means they need to either beat probably BelSwans or Olympic on the way home, maybe Lambton, or get some points from a couple of those, which seems unlikely. I've got them getting 2 points from their remaining 5 games.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but based on what they've whipped up this year, they're not looking convincing by any means, unfortunately. They've conceded the most amount of goals this season in the competition. So although they can find the back of the net, they have a couple of tidy players that can score some goals. They're just leaking way too much. And they've had 1 win this season. Like you said, Scobes, we had the privilege of midweek game against Charlestown. Actually, it was a home game for New Lambton, and they done really well. They grafted out a good win, and it was very important at that time of the season, but they just haven't backed it up. It's 3 losses on the trot now since that win. And to be honest, probably looking at the schedule they have, they actually do have winnable games. Like, you have 2 games against Adamstown. You have 1 game against BelSwans, which is they're on a pretty slippery slope at the moment as well. They haven't won a game in 5. And then Newcastle Olympic, they're going to have some confidence just getting a point out of them on the weekend. And then you go into the Jaffas game, and that's a derby. Anything can happen there, and that's proven to be the case over the last couple of seasons as well. So it just depends on the internal belief and really what the change room is like before these games. It's a massive ask, but I think it's possible. But I wouldn't say they could. I think they're going to be the team to get relegated, automatic relegation.
I think the key for them, if they are going to do it, is they need to beat BelSwans and get on a run here. They need to beat BelSwans, maybe take a point against the Jaffas, as you said, and then that might give them some confidence into that Adamstown game. If they manage to do that, and again, they've been close in a few games. I think Buttes, you and I called them against Valentine, and I'm still not sure how they lost that game. Like, they were absolutely on top of that. But again, losing becomes a habit. As I said, that's the way I see it happening, is if they can beat BelSwans this week, match the round 2, I'm looking forward to calling that down at Blacksmith's Oval, into Lambton, got a point there, beat Adamstown. It puts a lot of pressure on Adamstown in the last game, depending on what they've done in some of those other games. So we'll see how that goes. Let's talk Adamstown. They sit on 14 points. Their run home, they start this weekend with Weston at Weston. Not an easy task. They then have some games that you can start to see them getting some points from. BelSwans at home, so they'll host BelSwans at Adamstown Oval. They then take on Lambton in the first of those 2 games on the 30th of July at Alder Park. Then they go to Lyle Carr to take on Azzurri. And then finally, they've got Lambton at home. I've got them getting a win and 2 draws. All those points are coming in the games against BelSwans and the 2 games for Lambton. And I think that'll actually potentially, depending on other results, lift them out of the relegation playoffs when we have a look at a couple of these other teams. That's probably going to be their focus. They're looking up, not down. What do you think, Buttes?
Yeah, I agree. I think Adamstown, different to that of Lambton, I see a little bit more with them. I see them actually getting results. They're good at home when they want to be. And again, the draw is probably favourable in some of those games. I can't see them taking any points at all against Weston. I think they're the on-form side at the moment, regardless of their 2 losses they just had. I think they're the team to beat. They play a great brand of football. But yeah, Adamstown, I'm with you, to be honest. I think they could win that game against BelSwans and have a little run for their own. I'd like to see them stay in the league. They've got a rich history, the club. They also did it very hard last year, prove that they can play in that relegation battle. But I'd like to think they can stay out of that relegation playoff this season. I think it's achievable.
Yeah, I still think it's achievable. Harry, how do you see these guys? I think, again, Adamstown, we know, they've got Dino Fajkovic, who's one of the most experienced strikers in the league. He's been around for what seems forever and a day. They've got some good young players as well. Taj Buck's really impressed me the couple of times I've called them. How do you see them going? Do you think they manage to avoid the relegation playoff, or have you got them falling into 11th?
I've got them just staying up. I think Weston this week is no easy game at all, because Weston have shown how good they are up at Rockwell Automation Park, apart from the game that the Jaffas went up there and beat them 2-0. But BelSwans at home is a chance for them to really kickstart their run home, if that sort of makes sense. I think they're at home against a team who, I know we'll touch on BelSwans soon, but I thought BelSwans had a really impressive start of the season. They're sort of falling down a little bit towards the back end of this season, so they get a win in that one. I feel like that just sets them up really nicely for the back end of the season, and yeah, I've got them staying up.
Well, it'll be an interesting one, that game. Adamstown will be looking for some revenge. BelSwans, famously came back from 2-1 down to win 5-2 in the opening match of the season. That was absolute scenes on their return to the NPL. And that game will have lots of spice on it, because they'll both know that it's one of those, I know we hate this line, Buttes, but it's one of those 6-pointers.
Yeah, it definitely is a 6-pointer. And I think there's going to be a few of those heading into these last couple of rounds, just how the ladder's been placed everywhere from top to bottom. But yeah, no doubt that'll be a pretty spicy game.
It certainly will. You touched on it, Harry. Let's move on to one of these other sides to sit down. Let's talk BelSwans. They're sitting just above Adamstown by 1 point at the moment. They've had a bit of a rollercoaster ride. As I said, their season got off to a start that was absolutely stunning for a lot of people. They thought Adamstown would get the job done. They look like they're doing enough to hopefully stave off relegation. You kind of don't want to see that yo-yo effect happening. They finish with Lambton at home, Adamstown at home, Maitland away, which is going to be a really tough one, and then Olympic at home. I think, knowing Mick Stafford, he's probably looking at 3 of those 4 games at least, all 3 of the ones at home at Blacksmiths, as possibly winnable, if not definite points-getting games.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like you mentioned, Chris, the start of the season, there was a lot of buzz around BelSwans and what they were trying to do. But as the season sort of progressed, I think they've sort of found that probably maybe this competition isn't as easy as maybe they would have thought. And like you said, they've got some really tricky games towards the back end of the season, but in their favour is they are home games. So I think that can always play advantage, being the home team. And I think, yeah, like you said, Chris, I think they'll do enough just to stay up, just because of the impressive start to the season that they did have.
Buttes, I've got these guys actually getting 2 wins. I've actually got them upsetting Olympic in the final round to probably avoid the playoff, which is going to absolutely kill my friends at Newcastle Olympic. They're not going to love that. But I've got them getting seven points from these 3 games, which will be enough to see them just get clear and probably actually end up finishing. I've actually got them finishing, I think, in about 8th, but not by much.
Yeah. Well, again, they created a fortress for themselves at the start of the season, and they've actually proved that again, regardless of the result on the weekend, it was a good result for the Jaffas, a 3-0 win, but it's been a very difficult place for teams to get points. We've seen Magic just scrape away with a win there. I think it finished 3-1 in the end, but, BelSwans are winning 1-0 in the 80th. Got a little bit unfortunate with 2 penalties, I believe. They took a point away. They took 2 points away from Edgeworth with a draw. And that was when Edgeworth, earlier in the season, they've only dropped a handful of points this year. So they've created definitely, a fortress there. And I believe that, again, not a professional term, but they've got a real dog attitude about them. It's a tough team to come up against and play. And look, I'd have to agree with you. I could see an upset on the cards there as well on the last round. We'll talk about Olympic a little bit later, but I think they won't make the finals. I think they don't have enough ticker. They're not getting the results that they need to, and they're a little bit loose defensively. But I'd love to see the BelSwans stay up. I wouldn't want to see them go down again. Like you said, have that yo-yo effect. You want to see these teams establish themselves and do enough to stay up. But I think what we're seeing with, just the ladder and the fixtures, right? We've said it with all of the clubs so far, New Lambton, Adamstown and BelSwans. There's winnable games there. It's just who's going to step up in the last couple of rounds and do enough to stay in the top flight of NPL Newcastle.
Yeah, exactly right. I think the best of these teams mix it, and we've seen that with all 3 of the teams we've just talked about. They can get into arm wrestles, but unfortunately, they're not consistently doing it. BelSwans probably a little bit more consistently. That's why they're just above these. The next team, Harry, is Valentine. Now, I've got some concerns for Valentine. They had some mid-season drama with the change of coach. They saw players leave. Carter Smythe returned to Lambton. We saw a few other things happen there. They look like they've found a little bit of form in recent weeks with a draw against Azzurri, a win over New Lambton. But when you look at the run home, they play the Jaffas away this weekend. They then go Maitland at home, Magic away, Weston at home. That is 4 of 5 genuine contenders. It's 4 teams that are sitting in that top 6 at the moment. I've got them not taking any points on the way home and finding themselves sitting in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly, Chris. And I think when I looked over each team's run home, I think it's pretty safe to say that they're one of the teams that do have the hardest run home. Really tricky games to get points off, especially on the road as well. They've got a couple of really tricky away games to go to in the Jaffas. And yeah, I think I'm with you, Chris. I can't see them really. They might scrape a draw here and there, but I think, they'll be really lucky if they are to stay up and pick points out of these last 4 games.
My numbers, Buttes, have them needing to at least win and then rely on goal difference one of those games. And I just don't see which one of those teams they win. And I can't see them getting 3 draws out of the 4 either, which it's tough. But this is just the luck of the draw, I guess, with who you get on the way home. They've got 4 genuine contenders.
Yeah, of course. And again, Valentine have struggled to keep goals out of their net this year as well. Look, it's caught me by surprise as well. I guess you look at the ladder and you think, all right, well, look, Adamstown, New Lambton have, been at the bottom, I guess, for the majority of the year. But, we start to speak it out and we talk about Valentine's next 4 games. Like, that is a lot more difficult than the other sides have for their remaining fixtures. I can't see them getting any points either, to be honest. It's a really difficult run in. They haven't proved enough this year that they can contest with those big sides either. I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if they fall into that relegation battle as well. Again, you look at the table, they sit 9th. You're not really thinking they're in that space. You're looking at Adamstown, only 2 points behind them, but, Adamstown and New Lambton have got that game in hand as well. So that into consideration, you could be, I'd have to say I'm with you there. It's a very tough run for Valentine. They got to, pull the rabbit out of the hat, I think, for these remaining games.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got an eye on that Maitland game at home. They played them in round one, a 3-3 draw. We know Valentine can score goals, but as you said, they shipped them as well. The challenge for them, very different Maitland side in round one to what we're looking at now, Butts.
Yeah, definitely. And, we had the luxury to call that game against Edgeworth a couple of weeks back. And although it was a 2-0 defeat, they play a good brand of football. And I believe they've got a good side as well on paper. They had plenty of high expectations heading into this season, probably under-delivered. But look, they're sitting fourth now, right? They're playing some good football. They're starting to hit form at the right time. I think they play a very similar brand of football to Western Bears. I think, they really like to keep the ball at feet and trust in their players in their midfield, play through the lines. And again, a game that Valentine will probably try to win, of course, being at home. But I think Maitland will secure a spot in the finals for sure and be a threat, bit of a dark horse.
Yeah, I think they're a bit of a smoky as well. We'll get to them in a moment. Let's move on to Cooks Hill. And this is where that double-edged sword comes in that we were talking about before, Harry. They've got 6 games, 5 of them set in. The Western game has not been set in, but they'll actually play Western twice because they have the State Cup final. They've also got a game to catch up, as we said, in terms of the Australia Cup round of 32. So realistically, again, they've got 8 games to get through in this period. It's going to be a very busy run for Cooks Hill and their squad. No disrespect to them, probably doesn't run as deep as Western's does. We saw that last night. They went down to Magic in a catch-up game. Now let's have a look when we talk about their run home. Charlestown Olympic, Lambton, Maitland, Broadmeadow, Weston. Again, similar to Valentine, a lot of very tough games. Throw in a game they've got in the round of 32. I'm trying to think who they drew. I'll come. They head off to Adelaide, Croatia, I think.
Croatia, yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah, so they've got a trip to Adelaide in there as well, not just games. It's going to be a really tough run home for this young Cook side. But again, if anyone can get them up for it, it's Zorro. He got them up for that to get through to the Australia Cup.
Yeah, you actually took the words right out of my mouth there. I was actually going to mention the experience of Zorich and how vocal he is on the sidelines as well. And I feel like with Cooks Hill, they've been in games this season. We saw them last night. They conceded quite early against Broadmeadow, but they stuck and they dug into that game. They just weren't able to get any points or a result out of it. But I feel like Chris Zorich is the right man to know that, there's six or so games left. They're difficult, but we have to, give it our best. I think they've been in games, like I said, they just struggled to. There's been games where they've played well and haven't come out with any results. So it's a really challenging period for them, especially like you mentioned with the Australia Cup. And I think this is a really busy time for them, but games they certainly need to get up for.
Yeah, because it's going to be an interesting run for them. I personally just don't see how many points they take from this. The good news for Cooks Hill fans is it would take absolutely a bunch of minor miracles for them to end up on the wrong end of the ladder. I just don't see. I think that very quickly, if they don't take big points from these next couple of games against Charlestown and Olympic, that all of a sudden that's going to be season over for them. And then, with the young, inexperienced guys, it might be hard to continue to stay up for that, depending on what they're doing in the Cup and the State Cup final as well. If they start getting, a few losses in a row there, all of a sudden it could just be a pretty average run home for them, just due to inexperience as much as anything.
Yeah, I agree. They've obviously got a good backlog of games there, a couple of games in hand. Australia Cup, of course, State Cup. Again, exciting for the club. And I think, being a player in the dressing room, I know last year having the opportunity to be a part of the Australia Cup, you've got that on your mind. If it's a month away, a couple of weeks away, you're thinking about that game. And they're probably not looking at the ladder thinking they're anywhere near the relegation battle, which I don't think they will be either. I think they'll be okay. They're a good enough side to get points, scrap some draws, potentially a win off some of these sides as well. I think a game against Olympic could be a winnable game as well. They have the experience in the coach. They do have a young side, but they have a little bit of ticker, but they have struggled a little bit to find the back of the net this year. So, look, I think it's a tough run. Again, I think their focus will definitely be more on the Australia Cup at the moment. Can they knock on the door for finals? They have to win the next couple to actually really believe it. If they don't win these next couple, then I think they're probably just going to plateau and probably finish in a similar position that they are now.
Yeah, I agree. I don't have them moving too far. I do have them drifting down a little bit just because I'm a little bit bullish on the BelSwans run, but I think it's just going to be tight in terms of where they all finish. It's going to be quite congested when we have a look at it. And, we talk onto the next team, and they're another team that's probably in a similar boat, probably more of a hope of finals at the moment, but just 5 games to come, Harry, with Newcastle Olympic. We've got Edgeworth first up at home, Cooks Hill away, New Lambton away, Weston away, BelSwans away. Certainly some winnable games, and it could well come down to them heading into those last two games on the road, needing 2 wins.
Yeah, certainly. I think you've again summed it up well. I think the Edgeworth game at home this week will be a challenge for them just because I think the two sides met earlier in the season. I think Edgeworth actually beat Olympic 3-0. So it's a challenging period for Olympic. I think at the start of the season, I actually had them quite high on the ladder in prediction because I thought with the way the squad was set out, they were going to achieve good things, but they haven't really delivered this year and they've sort of put themselves in this position where it could come down to those last few games. I think there's a few teams where it could come down to actually the final day or the final last round to determine who makes the finals. To be honest, I know Buttes didn't back them, but I think I'm going to have them just scrape in. I think I'm going to have them just make the finals just because of a little bit of experience in there, I think, as well. They're a club who's always in and around the finals, and I just can't see them missing out this year.
So I'm guessing then, Harry, you've got them beating BelSwans, New Lambton, Cooks Hill for 9 points,
Yep.
which on my maths would get them to 31 and maybe picking up a point against either Edgeworth or Weston.
Yeah, I think that Edgeworth game this week is important because it could, they win this weekend, and I feel like the other games, like you mentioned, are winnable. And I think, I just can't see them not featuring in the final series this year. I just feel like there's something about them that they'll make an appearance and they'll be back in there this year.
Well, Buttes, I think you and I share a little bit more of a less bullish opinion, shall we say, about Olympic. My biggest question mark has just been injuries and inconsistency of lineup. We know how important, they talk about this in all professional sports, the cohesion, and they tend to see that that the cohesion coefficient, I think they call it, where the number of players that play together in the same team in the same positions on a consistent run tends to bode well. And we've seen that, most notably their biggest signing, Roy O'Donovan. Roy's been in and out, and again, he's at an advanced age. He's got some injuries and issues happening with his back, which makes it really challenging. But that's been impacting them because it just hasn't been a consistent performance and consistent players in that 11.
Yeah, of course, Chris. And, at the start of the year, I know predictions early in the season are far-fetched, but there was massive riding on Newcastle Olympic. We know the players they had signed, the money they had invested, and the experience that they were willing to bring in Roy O'Donovan as well, who unfortunately hasn't played many games for them. He's dealing with his own injuries and stuff, but they've just been very inconsistent this year. They haven't been able to string a lot of wins on the trot. They haven't really had a very successful run. It always looks like they're going somewhere, and then they've let themselves down with a poor result. And for me, I can continue to see them moving in that fashion. Again, we move into this business end, and the most important thing with any club at this time of the year is form. And that's going to prove really costly for a lot of teams. I think they've just not shown enough signs for me to lock in a finals position, especially when you've got teams like Maitland, who I think will be in there. Charlestown are on the slippery slope at the moment, and we'll talk about that soon. I've seen enough from the Jaffas this year. They haven't been able to score goals, but they can also keep them out when they want to. But they're 2 on the trot now as well. They did lose that game to Olympic a couple of weeks back, 3-1. Me and Scobie went to go watch that game, and it was a tough afternoon at Darling Street. Not much football being played, and it was really just a scrap for the ages. I didn't really consider that much of a football branded game in terms of quality. I don't see Olympic making the finals. I know they've got that game in hand against, Charlestown and Jaffas at the moment. I just don't see them doing enough to sneak in and secure that position.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. As I said when Harry was going through, I think the cutoff's probably going to be 32, and that means that they need to essentially get a draw against either Edgeworth or Weston. Weston away is a tough one. Edgeworth, just in general, is a tough one, especially when you consider they're going to be coming up against an Edgeworth team that's just suffered their first league loss of the season. So we know Pete McGuinness is going to have them backs to the wall, ready to go. We saw how they came out after they lost in that Australia Cup the other week, so that's going to be interesting. Let's move on to the team. And Harry, you've got them in your background, Buttes. They're your side as well. So I don't doubt there'll be a little bit of bias here, but I'm going to go off the top and start with it. Well, Lambton Jaffas, their next 3 games, Valentine, New Lambton, Cooks Hill. Now, remembering that Lambton are on 23, I think the cutoff is 32. I've got them getting basically to that 32 in those 3 games. They should all be games that they win. if they can't take 9 points from that, it sounds pretty harsh, Butts, but I don't think they deserve to be in the finals.
Yeah, I agree. It's harsh, but it's the reality. This is the form that they need. I know internally in the club, we've had a look at the fixtures as well, and everyone knows that they have to be winnable games at this time of the year against the opposition that they're playing. It's time to take that form on a serious run and into the finals. And again, a club that's played finals football for the last couple of years and shared success. So there's obviously a standard and a benchmark there. We had a impressive season last year, of course, fell short, but there's plenty of not pressure, but there is expectation to play finals football. It's a big club, and on paper, again, a squad that's maybe under-delivered a little bit this year, been a bit inconsistent. But the main issue for Jaffas this season has been the goals scored. We haven't been able to find the back of the net. I think the first 10 rounds or so, 8 rounds definitely, we were really struggling to find a goal. We were keeping goals out. We weren't conceding that much, but we just weren't scoring. There hasn't been that cohesion and that chemistry. And there's been a little bit of hope over these last couple of weeks that we are finding the back of net, that there is a little bit of cohesion, a bit of chemistry forming. And there's that little bit of ticker, a little bit of dog as well, which I think the Jaffas, again, if they carry that through the next 3 weeks, which are really winnable games, they have to be winnable games. If they're not winnable games, then I don't even see any confidence in playing finals football. Because if they do manage to get there, they'll probably be out in the first week. If they win these next 3, then they could carry on with some serious form.
If they win those 3, Harry, they come into Maitland, and Butch just talked about it. I think it was after 11 games, they had 7 goals. We're now 18 games in, and they're up to 20. So they're starting to find it. Is it exactly where Dave Tenchevsky wants? Probably not quite yet, but that's okay. It's building, which is what you want to be doing at this time of the season. You want to be heading towards a peak, and they've got 3 games perfectly situated to do that. The way I've got my ladder shaping up, though, they go into Maitland in the last round, and Maitland and they will be jostling for 4th and 5th place to play each other again the next week, which could be an interesting one. But as you said before, a lot of these last round games are going to have some interesting permutations. How do you see the Jaffas, and is it with your head or is it with your heart that you're seeing
it? Yeah, just first off, I just wanted to say I think it's a very different side to last year. I think last year, like Butte said, we were finding the back of the net way more often. I think you feel confident as a sort of supporter on the sideline going to games and knowing that we were probably going to not smash teams last year, but comfortably up for the task. And this year, start of the season was poor. We're sort of coming good towards this back into the season now. I think that last game against Maitland will be crucial. And I think, if I'm right, it's Old Boys Day as well. So that game's going to have a lot of riding on it. And do I got them creeping into the finals? I think just. Do I think they'll go far in the finals? Probably not. But I think just considering like the goals that they've put 3 past BelSwans on the weekend, they're starting to find the back of the net a little bit. So if everyone stays fit and the squad that they have at the minute, I've got them just creeping in. But those first 3 games are really important. And then obviously the last one of the season against Maitland at home.
I'm keeping score here, Harry. You've got Olympic and Lambton already into your finals. So that means a couple of others are going to have to miss out, which we'll get to in a moment. Butts, it sounds like you've got Lambton probably sneaking in, which means I'm guessing that the team we're going to talk about next may not be the case, and that is the Charlestown Azzurri side. We talked about it before with Olympic. They've been a similar situation. A lot of players out. Reece Pappas has barely played this season. Taylor Regan's missed games. A number of others have missed games. They've had a lot of injuries and a lot of unavailability, which has made it hard for them. They're sitting just inside the 5 as we speak, but not with a lot of confidence. They've got Lambton and Olympic nipping at their heels. They've only got 4 games to play, and there's some tough ones in there, but they've got a bit of a mixed bag run home. They're at home to Cooks Hill this weekend, which they will definitely see as a winnable game. Lyle Carr is not an easy place to visit. They then go away to Weston, home to Adamstown, again a must-win game, and then away to Edgeworth, which it could come down to that game. Edgeworth will be most likely chasing the premiership. Charlestown will be maybe scrapping for 5th place. I've got them missing the finals. I've actually got them heading into that last game potentially if they don't win against Cooks Hill this weekend. They don't take any 3 points, and they haven't been at their best the last few weeks. We know that. They drew to Valentine a couple of weeks ago. They lost to Maitland last week. I've got them missing the finals by 4 points in the end.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you, Chris. I'd say I don't have them in my finals run. They showed good signs at the start of the year. I think they were leading the competition after 4 rounds or 5 rounds, I believe. But unfortunately, it's been probably the opposite effect for them in that the form is, going the other way. They've had some pretty disappointing results recently. that won a couple of weeks back as well against New Lambton. That's going back a month or so now, but that was New Lambton's first win, and I know Charlestown had some good opportunities that game, but I saw a really deflated side with, minimal players on the bench that could make an impact. I know their depth in the squad is probably not as good as some of the other clubs we see in the competition, and they've also been stuck and riddled with a lot of injuries, which is super unfortunate, especially at this time of the year where you want your players fit and available. You want guys off the bench putting in an impact, putting in a shift, and probably saving players where you need them for the bigger games. They just don't have that luxury at the moment. They have a very experienced and probably like heavy side in terms of like bigger bodies, and they know how to navigate themselves when it comes to this time of the season, which leaves a question in my mind. Are they going to, turn the screws a little bit and have a good run home? Because they are a side that, again, has that dog in them that is tough to play against in these bigger games. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Charlestown respond after these probably poor last couple of weeks. But again, they're going to fall short for me, unfortunately. I don't think they're going to have enough form or quality to get the results that they need for the remaining games.
Harry, it's an interesting one when you look at it. If we go all the way back to Easter weekend, Charlestown have won 2 games since then. As Butte said, they were sitting high up above the top of the table, going really well early on. But injuries and inconsistency has pulled them apart since then. Yes, they've had some moments. They've had draws with the likes of Jaffas and Broadmeadow, but it just hasn't been enough. And it's possibly going to leave them short. And I'm guessing based on the fact you've got Olympic and Jaffas already in, you also don't have Charlestown, and that'll make 3 from 3 of us.
Yeah, spot on. I think I'm similar with exactly what Matt said. I think a couple of weeks ago, I sort of saw a Charlestown side that wasn't really up for it. They didn't seem to have the talk was really low. They didn't have any players to come and make an impact off the bench. And I just think, like you mentioned, Chris, with some of the players that haven't featured this year, their squad's been it's chopped and changed so much. And I just think, when we talk about confidence coming into these last few games, I don't think Charlestown are particularly high on confidence. I think they're a couple of points that they haven't been able to get, which they probably would have liked. And I just don't see enough. Like Matt mentioned, they do come together for the big games, but I just don't see enough grit in them to push for this final series.
Yeah, I think they're going to need to beat Cooks Hill and Adamstown on their home turf, plus get a result, probably a win realistically, and take 9 points out of these last 4 games. And a win either away to Weston or Edgeworth would be something. Is it impossible? No, but probably improbable from my point of view. Let's move on to Maitland. They've got 5 games to come. Again, one of these sides that's got a bit of a mixed bag. They're away to Broadmeadow this weekend, which is a huge ask. They are in form. They've been climbing the ladder. They're sitting 4th at the moment. They then play Valentine, BelSwans and Cooks Hill. Valentine are at Crowders Bay. The next 2 are at home at Maitland at Cook Square Park. And then they finish with that game, as I said, up against the Jaffas. I've got them taking 8 points, possibly 10 from these games, which will secure them into either 4th or 5th place. Harry, what are your thoughts on the Magpies? I think they're a side that's really turned the corner since the midpoint of this season and built some consistency.
Yeah, the start of the season was quite disappointing in terms of their regards. I don't think they were reaching their expectations that they probably had set out at the start of the season. I know, speaking to a few people at Maitland, like the whole start of the season, they actually did a lot of rebranding. I think they got a new club logo and a brand new kit and all that. And the start of the season was quite poor, and they've sort of lifted towards this back of the season, especially at home. I think you guys, called the game against the Jaffas where they sort of kick-started that run. And obviously putting Charlestown to the sword last week, 3-1, I believe it was. So they're building form at the right time. I just don't see them creeping in. But then again, they are one side to watch, especially in attack. They've been finding the back of the net lately and also keeping them out. So definitely a side to watch. And I think I'll reiterate what I said earlier about that last game of the season against the Jaffas. I think that'll be a huge one.
So Harry's got that last game deciding it by the sounds of it. Lambton, Old Boys Day, the Old Boys getting them home, Butte. So I'm sure that'll be nice for you. How have you got Maitland? Have you got them creeping in? I think by my numbers, you've got them sitting in with Olympic out versus Harry's 5.
Yes. That's what it'd look like. Essentially what we're looking at the ladder right now, I'd say Jaffas fall into that top 5 at the moment. Maitland will probably sit 4th as well. I think they'll potentially collect 9 points in their next 3 games. From what I've seen from them in this second half of the season is much better than what I saw in the first half. They play a really nice brand of football, and I think the there's a handful of sides in this league that really good at ball retention. Again, Weston, I think, are probably leading in that aspect. But Maitland are not far off. And that game that we called as well a couple of weeks back, Chris, against Edgeworth, well, they were well in the fight the whole game. They definitely, a game that probably didn't have clear-cut chances on either side. But there was 2 set pieces that went into Edgeworth's favour. If you kind of scrap those 2, it's a 0-0 game. Maitland potentially get something out of that as well. Like I said, I've seen enough of them this year that I think they're going to continue their form in that positive trajectory, and they'll finish 4th. I think they'll be a serious contender. They might be another dark horse as well. I think the league and teams are on notice that Maitland are a team that are pushing and knocking on the door. So look, they'll finish 4th for me. I think they'll have a really positive finish to this season, and potentially like the Jaffas as well, finish with good form, which will make a really interesting last round for Old Boys Day at the Jaffas.
Yeah, I think the key is going to be for these teams. We know realistically that this cluster of, say, 5, including Cooks Hill, are fighting for 2 spots realistically. So they're going to be going into finals. They're playing sudden death, a lot of them all the way through, and then they're going to be into sudden death finals as well, which I think kind of makes them a little bit dangerous, because if they're coming in with form, which they're going to need to have, it's not one of those years where the finals are going to be determined 3 weeks out and, teams are resting. They might not have the same momentum. So it's certainly going to be interesting. And a team that I think will actually have quite a bit of momentum is a team that sits in 3rd, and I think they've got those extra games. I said, and Butch, you'd know this, as a guy that plays at this level. Sometimes there's something about, you get the boys around and you're just playing all the time. You're not actually doing as much, intensive training. And if the wins and points are coming, and I've actually got Weston getting points in every one of their games on the way home, then, you throw in it, you win some silverware in the State Cup. Maybe maybe not even advance against Heidelberg. That might be their only loss, but they, get rattled. They rattle a team that is, the top team in NPL Victoria, which is some feat. This Western side could be really interesting. They take on Adamstown this weekend, which, again, up there, they've got 4 games in a row at home at the moment scheduled. Adamstown, Charlestown, Edgeworth, Newcastle Olympic, Valentine away, and then the Cooks Hill game to be determined away at Cooks Hill. I can see them, by my maths, maybe drawing with Charlestown and Edgeworth, but taking, say, 14 points from these 6 games.
Yeah, I agree. And look, Weston, again, had the luxury of watching them on the weekend against Broadmeadow, a team that lost 3-1. I thought they were the better side. Watching the game briefly last night, I actually saw both of the goals they scored down the left edge with Dom Archbold, and they go down that left side quite commonly through Chris Hurls, their captain as well. And they like to exploit the wing backs and use the width, but they're just so composed. They play a really good brand of football. They've got a really structured formation and game plan, which I think Q Allen's done an exceptional job with. Their signings have been great as well. Musi in the midfield's playing great. They've got that American boy as well, who's been an absolute workhorse for them. And then you've got the experience in Cooper Buswell, he's just an exceptional player. So I think they're going to carry great confidence and form into the remaining games of the season. I think the Australia Cup and the State Cup will only be a good thing for them, regardless of if you think it's going to, add fatigue or be another game on the calendar. Yeah, these boys are excited for this game. They're going to be up for it. Again, if they do lose at the Australia Cup, regardless of the result, I think it's a positive for the club and the players just to be playing on that platform and that level, and then to take their performances and their form at the moment into that stage, and then hopefully bring it back into the league. For me, I think Western Bears will win the competition this year.
Well, you've heard it here first, Harry. He's gone out there. I'm going to go not quite as bold as that, but almost as bold. I'm going to say that the player that Matt Buettner just referenced, Burke Farling, is the most influential player in the NPL by some distance. What his impact, his work around the pitch, he is absolutely everywhere. He's like an energizer bunny. He's been a phenomenal find for them, as has their man between the sticks in George Stevens. I can see them going all the way to the grand final. Whether they win it or not is another thing, but these guys are a serious outfit.
Yeah, they're huge. I think one thing that I look at when I see Western is with this short turnarounds, you mentioned, Chris, some weekends are going to have to be playing Wednesday, some Sunday. I think the biggest thing with Western, and it's just my opinion, is if they can keep their players injury fit, they can be a serious contender come the finals. But if they start to, maybe if they bow out of the Australia Cup and then a couple of niggles and injuries and players aren't able to back up in quick succession, they could find themselves, in serious trouble come finals time. But say everyone stays fit and they're producing performances like they have been, certainly agree with the pair of you. I think they'll be a threat to watch.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll keep moving along because we do have a deadline to meet. Broadmeadow Magic, they sit equal with Edgeworth at the moment. They're looking dangerous. They've got a pretty good run home. They play Maitland at home. They then play the big game against Edgeworth at home, which could potentially determine the premiership. They then play Valentine and Cooks Hill, which should be winnable games for them. I think they've got a slightly easier run home than Edgeworth, Harry, when we look at it. So if I was a betting man, and we're pricing this up, it's probably $1.80 to $2 in Broadmeadow's favour to finish top and take the premiership.
Yeah, certainly got the better of the run home, especially with that Edgeworth slipping up last night. I think that just gives them a little bit of confidence. I know for yourself, if you're pushing for that first place and you work hard all season and come to business end, the other team starts to slip up, just gives you that extra bit of confidence to know you got to go on now. And Edgeworth, they'll definitely react this week against Olympic, especially at home. I expect them to come out and want to get 3 points, but Magic have the easier run home, and I'm expecting them to lift that premiership come season's end. And I believe if they come first, they make the Oz Championship as well.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. It's obviously a lot on the line, and Buttes, it could be determined to an extent on the 27th of July when these two teams go head-to-head, toe-to-toe in what's going to be an absolute humdinger at Magic Park. But again, you never say never because other teams will love to play spoilers on the run home, but I'm just, not by a lot, but I'm just leaning Broadmeadow, even if it's just shared points there at Magic Park.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same. Look, if I had the choice of being in the Edgeworth camp or Broadmeadow at the moment, I'd want to be in Broadmeadows. They haven't lost a game for some time now. In fact, their first loss was in round 1 against Edgeworth. I think it was a 90th minute winner from Ryan Fuchs, who's obviously not at Edgeworth anymore. And they've had 2 wins after his departure, but then they've had that loss last night as well. Is there a little bit of nerves creeping in for Edgeworth? Potentially. Again, if you're the chaser, Broadmeadow, they've been sitting first and second all season, but Broadmeadow have always been that 3 points behind. Now they're suddenly on the same level. I think Broadmeadow would be full of confidence with what they achieved last year, what they did in the grand final. They've got a young and enthusiastic side. They've got a lot of X factor as well. I'd have to say, out of all the sides in the competition, they probably have the best X factor. They probably have some really exciting key individual players as well who can change a game in an instant. And that's why Broadmeadow are so difficult to play against, because it might be a transition moment. It might be, one play, but they can execute to a great fashion. And you know what? They've got a great coach in Jimmy Kresner as well. They're really well drilled, well disciplined, and they've got a side that's remained the same or very similar for the last 2 to 3 seasons. So their cohesion, understanding, and chemistry between the players and the staff and the club as a whole is blooming. So I think they will probably get the run into the B League for me. I think they'll take that position over Edgeworth this season.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the line. But again, they've got 4 games at home. You couldn't ask. We talked about it before, the luck of the draw. And again, some of this is due to that washout round, all these sorts of things. They've got 4 games straight at home to finish the season. It is the perfect run home. It is, you've got that game against Edgeworth to get some momentum. It'll be interesting coming into finals, though. They do play Valentine and Cooks Hill. And then if they do finish first, obviously get the week off. So you wonder, how battle-hardened they are versus someone like Weston, versus someone like Edgeworth, who are probably going to have a few more challenging games. Speaking of Edgeworth, let's go to their run home now. They've got 4 contenders on the run home, which makes it challenging, but it also gives you that chance to be, steel sharpens steel, right? Olympic away, Broadmeadow away, Weston away, and they finish at Jack McLaughlin with Charlestown. I've got them taking points from every game, but I've got them having a draw with Broadmeadow and Weston on the road, which means that they will slip to second place, and it means that they will play Weston again at Jack McLaughlin in the first week of finals. Buttes, we've just talked about it. The thing that's impressed me most, though, and as you said, we called them the other week, while Broadmeadow can find ways to win when they're not the best side, as they did against Weston the other day, these guys and their defensive nous, their defensive screws, the way they keep turning up for each other, you just find it hard to see them losing too often. Their 2 centre-backs in Wowries and I'm having a mental blank on the other, Tyler Harrison. Yes, thank you, that came up from Glenorchy, are huge. The other thing that's huge for them, though, Jackson Brady, if he gets more than a week for that red card last night, he'll miss that Broadmeadow game, and he's such a key piece to how they structure their attacks.
Yeah, I agree. And that's right. That's been their, regardless of the goals they've scored this year, and we know they can score goals. Edgeworth have been clinical in front of the net. Their defense has been, their statement piece. And, they're so well drilled. And we saw that a couple of weeks back where I mentioned it mid-game, how many boys they get behind the ball. They're so disciplined. Pete McGuinness has got a really structured and disciplined side there. Who all know their roles. Their cohesion and understanding of each other as well is exceptional. The big game, of course, is that one in 2 weeks' side against Magic. And they're going to be travelling to Magic Park as well, where they had lost the grand final, unfortunately, in penalties last year. Again, maybe a bit of head noise. They've just had their second loss of the season. Yeah, they did okay and got results after losing their big number 9. But it's still a big loss. We know they can score goals, but it's still a big loss. So, maybe the boat's starting to rock a little bit for Edgeworth. I think they'll get a win this week. I really think it'll come down to that game against Broadmeadow, which I believe could be a draw as well. It'll be like a grand final type atmosphere. I think it'll be a great battle. Do I think they'll remain first for these last 4 rounds? No, I think Broadmeadow will get over the top, whether that be in points or goal difference potentially. It looks like Edgeworth goal difference is actually quite positive. So I guess it's in their hands, right? Yeah. It's in Edgeworth's hands at the moment. That's spiced it up a little bit. I think Broadmeadow will take out that position for B-League, though. I think they're going to win at home. I think Edgeworth will just, again, form's important. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting. Harry, Weston can also play spoilers if the points are shared. They'd love nothing more than just to take a share of the points at home against Edgeworth, take some momentum in and continue on. This is a stat. Buttes talked about their defence. 10 clean sheets this year and only twice, including last night, have they conceded more than 1 goal. That makes them hard to break down. Have you got them or Magic finishing on top of the ladder?
I've got Magic finishing first. I just think with the way the things are sort of finishing towards the back end of this season, I just wonder where the goals are sort of going to come from Edgeworth as well, because I think some people sort of underestimate the goals that Ryan Fuchs scored when he was in the competition, obviously over at Sydney Olympic now. But I just feel Magic, it's huge for them last night, seeing Edgeworth lose and go down. I just feel like Magic will continue strong and push their way into the B-League. But I think Edgeworth, it's a huge test for them as well to see how they fare in these last 4 games, especially with the amount of away games they have as well, Chris.
Yeah, that is going to be an interesting challenge for them. That is for sure. So we've all got Broadmeadow on top, Edgeworth second, Weston third. We've then all got Jaffas either 4th or 5th. Harry, you've got Olympic coming into that playoff game, the elimination game in the first week. Buttes and I have got Maitland. We've all got New Lambton automatic relegation. We've got Valentine likely sitting in that next playoff spot. It looks like Cahaiba and Toronto are fighting it out in the Northern League for automatic qualification. So we could see Toronto or Wobber back in, Cahaiba with a slight advantage at the moment. The phenomenal thing, though, when you then look at the next 3 spots in those playoffs, is all sides down to South Cardiff in 10th are only separated from 4th to 10th by 6 points. So with the run home in the Northern League, everyone is still alive, which is phenomenal. Imagine that. South Cardiff could run over the last 3 games. If they won everything and results went their way, they could sneak into 5th. And then go on a run into 4th, and then go on a run and make their way into the NPL. That would be some story with only a handful of games to go. We'll wait and see how that plays out. But it's sure as hell going to be an interesting run home, both in the NPL and the Northern League One. Matthew Buettner, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Chris. It was exceptional.
Harry Scobie, thank you as always, mate. We love having you on the Chris McPherson Show. Good to have you back, and we'll let you get out of here so you can get off to training.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.